Hello and welcome to this demo. In this video, we'll learn how to read and manipulate data from an Excel file using a data table and workbook activities. In this scenario, the HR manager needs to extract data from an Excel file containing employee information to calculate salaries based on the number of hours worked and a 2% salary increase. The HR manager has approached the RPA developer for help with automating this task. To create automation for the HR manager, we'll use workbook activities and data table activities. The first step will be to extract the data from the Excel file using workbook activities. Next, we'll use data table activities to manipulate the data by calculating employee salaries based on the number of hours worked and the 2% salary increase. Finally, we'll use workbook activities to write the updated data back to the Excel file. By automating this process, we can save the HR manager valuable time and reduce the risk of human error. Please note that in this demo, we'll be covering the basic information about data table activities. For those who are interested in learning more about this topic, we recommend taking our course, Data Manipulation with Data Tables in Studio, which will delve deeper into data table activities and provide more comprehensive training. Great! Here, we'll be using two Excel files, namely App1 Report and App2 Report. The Excel files contain data on employees such as their names, IDs, departments, salaries, and dates of hire. Let's create a new process and give it a proper name. Let's provide a brief description of the new process. Before we start, there are a couple of things that we need to do. First, let's create a folder named Input to store the input files. Second, we'll need to create a folder called Output to store the consolidated file that'll be generated by the automation. Now that we've created the necessary folders, we should add the For Each File in Folder activity to our workflow. This will allow us to iterate through the files and perform the necessary actions on them. Let's type the folder path in the In Folder field. If you prefer, you can also browse for the folder by clicking the Browse icon next to the field. Great! Now that we've set up the folder structure and file iteration, we can proceed with using the workbook activities in our project. There are a few important things to note about workbook activities. All workbook activities can be executed in the background. These activities don't require Microsoft Excel to be installed on the system. However, it's important to note that workbook activities only work with .xls and .xlsx files, and they don't support .xlsm files. Also, the files shouldn't be opened in Excel at runtime, as this can cause issues with the activities. Let's add the Read Range workbook activity to read the data from an Excel file and store it in a variable of data table type. We'll specify the full path of the current Excel file, including the sheet name in a workbook path field. Next, we'll create a variable of data table type in the Properties panel to store the information. Let's create a new variable of data table type. If you don't see this data type, you can browse for it using the Browse for Types option. And let's initialize the variable. We already know that initializing a variable is a crucial step. It enables you to define the schema for the table, create an empty table with the specified schema, store data, enable data manipulation using various methods such as sorting, filtering, or performing calculations, and share data between activities, either by passing the data table variable as an argument or by writing the data to a file or database for later use. Perfect! After reading the data from the Excel file, the next step is to merge it into the previously created data table. This can be done using the Merge Data Table activity. which allows you to combine the data from two data tables into a single data table. By merging the data in this way, we can ensure that all relevant information is combined and can be used in subsequent steps of the automation workflow. In the Merge Data Table activity, we input the name of the data table variable, dt_input, in the source field. This merges the data from the input data table into the destination data table, dt_report, enabling data processing and manipulation. Now that we've completed the necessary steps to read the data from the Excel files and merge them into a single data table represented by the dt_report variable, we can proceed with further data processing based on the requirements of our use case. This may include cleaning the data, filtering out unwanted information, performing calculations, or statistical analysis, and generating reports or visualizations to present the findings. Alright, let's proceed with filtering the data based on the department. For this task, we'll use the Filter Data Table activity. This activity allows you to specify conditions to filter the data within the data table variable. You can access the Filter Wizard window by clicking the Configure Filter button within the activity, which allows you to customize your filtering settings at any time. Let's configure the Filter Wizard to filter the data table dt_report based on our requirements. To do this, we need to open the Filter Wizard by clicking on the Configure Filter button within the Filter Data Table activity. We can either filter by a specific column or perform certain operations using the Operation field. Before we configure anything, let's take another look at the Excel file to identify the columns that we want to filter. Let's use the Filter Wizard to filter data based on the Departments column. We'll enter Marketing in the Value field to display only the data that pertains to the marketing department. Additionally, we can add multiple filter criteria using the Filter Wizard and choose whether we want to use AND or OR operators to apply them. This allows us to further refine our data and get more specific results. As of now, we're good. Let's click OK and return to the studio. Great! To store the filtered data, let's create a new data table. Great! With the filtered data table in place, we can now add a for each row loop activity to the workflow. This will allow us to iterate through the data table and apply a 2% salary increase to each employee. Next, we'll add an assign activity inside the body of the for each row loop to modify the data. To update the salary column, we'll enter current row, open bracket, open quotes, salary, close quotes, close brackets, in the To field. Next, we need to convert the salary data from string format to integer format so that we can perform mathematical operations on it. To do this, we'll use the expression editor to write an expression that converts the salary data to integers and calculates the incremented salary. Great! With the 2% increase now applied to salary data, we can move on to the next step. Lastly, we'll add the Right Range Workbook activity to the workflow. This will allow us to save the updated pay information to a new Excel file. OK, with the salary data now updated, we can save the results to a new Excel file. To do this, we'll specify the file path and name in the Workbook Path field of the Right Range Workbook activity. Let's name the file HR Report and save it in the Output folder that we created earlier. Let's rename the sheet in the Excel file and specify the data table variable containing the filtered data in the Data Table field of the Right Range Workbook activity. Alright, now that we've completed the workflow, let's run it and see it in action. Awesome! In the Output folder, we can see the HR Report spreadsheet. Great, it works as expected. We can now see the employee details and salaries for the marketing department in the table. To verify our results, let's open the app1 report.xlsx file and compare the results. It's clear from the new file that salaries have been increased. This concludes our demo on building automation using Workbook and Data Table activities. Let's do a quick recap. In this video, we've learned how to extract and manipulate data from Excel files using Data Table and Workbook activities. We learned how to set up folders, iterate through files, read data using the Read Range Workbook activity, merge data using the Merge Data Table activity, and filter data using the Filter Data Table activity. Initializing a data table variable is an essential step that enables us to define the schema, create an empty table, store data, and share data between activities. Workbook activities can be executed in the background, and they support .xls and .xlsx files, but don't support .xlsm files. The Filter Data Table activity allows us to filter data based on specific criteria and refine our results by adding multiple filter criteria using the Filter Wizard. Thank you for watching, and until next time, happy automation!